Hello, I'm Hannah Rogers, Head of New Business and Client Lead at Blue Yonder Research, and I'm delighted to be here today with NewMR. So as part of the Future Thinking Qual programme, I'd like to go through a new technique we've developed for global clients, which is called attribute mapping, AMAP, and very much focusing on innovating with impact. So I'll start by going through the challenge and then give you a really practical rundown on how you can actually do this yourselves and how you can achieve this, when and why and how to use it. So I think the challenge with Qual, as we all know, is that when we ask people to tell us about a product or a service and say, well, what do you think about it? They tell us it's nice. If we ask them to how to improve something or what should it be like in the future, make it easy to use. But the problem with this is it doesn't cut it in Qual. You know, good Qual isn't that vague. We need to be precise. And specifically, when we're designing for superiority or designing for the future, we need to give teams, whether it's a technical R&D team, as it is in this example, a marketing team, or even a service team, we need to give them a set of parameters to work to, which means they can actually make something. They can make decisions which are actionable and have really clear guardrails and parameters. They need to be able to do work that they know will hit that mark. So basically, we need to translate what works for consumers, practically, consciously, subconsciously, semiotically, into hard and fast rules for superior and consumer-centric product design. Bringing all those elements together to give clear parameters and guardrails, telling clients specifically what they need to do next to win in the market. And the example I'm going to talk through is working with a global leading brand R&D team in the laundry category. The brief, which I'm sure you'll all have seen things like this in the past before, was as follows. So what we need to do is define characteristics of the future for this laundry product. We need to support internal teams looking beyond superiority now to the next 5 years. So we need to, again, develop for the future. We need to make sure we win in the future as well. It's not all about today's battle, it's about future battles. We need to push the boundaries for next generation of product design. So again, make sure we get that edge. And we need to give design teams a head start on prototyping, because often, you know, it's a time-consuming, expensive process, even when it's done internally. So traditionally, you'd make, I don't know, 15, 20 different prototypes, and let's research them on a concept level, even if it's a CAD design, even if it's a sketch. But sometimes that's making them as well, and you have a lot of data. But actually, by looking at what you should be designing to start with, putting those parameters in place, putting those guardrails in place, you can narrow down that process, you can speed it up. So have fewer, stronger prototypes, give your design teams an advantage. And in order to achieve these things, answer these questions, we need to consider all individual design elements and attributes of the product. So if you think of a bottle of a laundry detergent, for example, think about all those little bits you can research. So everything from the colour, the shape, the cap, the viscosity, product, pack, comms, all of those elements. And also we needed to look and explore stimulus inside and outside the category. Looking at what competitors doing is great. It might get you superiority in the here and now, but it doesn't push you far enough into the future. So basically, with multiple attributes and territories to consider, we set traditional methodologies aside and we created something called the AMAP, attributes mapping, and approaching this challenge from a slightly different perspective. So when you're designing for the future and designing for superiority, you really need to start at the end. What kind of output do we need to achieve? So again, this is very much speaking to the design teams and saying, what do you need to make decisions? What do you need to design? So basically, there's some universal buckets which might be quite useful to go through. So when you're thinking about them, pack structure. First of all, when we talk about pack structure, what are the decisions a team needs to make? So they need to know about shape, size, handle, positioning, material, texture of material, all those elements which communicate something about a brand, as well as being functionally beneficial. Pack design, so front of pack, back of pack, claims, graphics, colour, language, all of these elements. Again, how big should the branding be? How big should the logo be? All of these elements need to be designed. So again, we need to think about that. What do they do holistically, what do they do in isolation? And the trick is to make sure all these little bits add up to one single version, one single concept and brand vision, because again, this is how we deliver superiority, whether it's now or in the future. The other bucket is very much product sensorials. So when we're thinking about product sensorials, again, think about a laundry product. Think about, you've got the liquid, you've got the smell, you've got that at various touch points, when it's neat, when warm, when it's on wet washing, etc., etc. You've got all those. But you've also got colour of the liquid, transparency, translucency of that liquid, viscosity of that liquid, the colour, all those little elements, the sheen on the liquid. I don't even fabric conditioners, some have a more pearly element. So again, let's have a think about these attributes. How can we narrow these down to give design teams a superior brief, a more focused brief? And again, it's not just about looking at these attributes. When you're doing attributes mapping, when you're designing for superiority, you need to make sure you know the relative importance of each attribute to win in each territory. So again, there's no point really focusing in on opening and closing the pack if actually what matters to consumers in the moments of truth in the real world is how easy it is to fit in the cupboard or its mess. So again, it's weighting each element. If you make this little change here, is it going to have, or invest time, effort and money in there, is it actually going to have an effect in the real world? So again, beyond understanding the attributes and the little elements which add up, how important is that attribute to the overall process of decision making? And although I think as an industry, we do our best to predict the future and we're often right, with something like this, we always say cover a few bases. So you might have your core brand and your core concept. And again, think about one particular laundry product. But actually, there's different benefit spaces it could move into if required. So your design team might be told at the moment, we're looking at efficacy and performance. But in future, we might want efficacy and performance with care, with a little bit of care put in, or sustainability, or actually, depending on what comes in from competitors, we might want to uplift the fragrance cues. So you can, if you understand the design rules, which focus on the core element, but push into these different territories, you can dial things and design elements up and down as the world evolves. But fundamentally, this picture here shows an attributes map. So I've just used a few bits of stimulus here to give you a sense of what we need to achieve. And the methodology is face-to-face, which is wonderful now the world's opened up. And basically, you are mapping stimulus, a whole load of stimulus, against a very specific concept. So, for example, if you're designing for a super efficacious and caring laundry product, you want to understand what product, what shape, what size, what colour, what fragrance immediately communicates that to consumers. So even if they saw nothing else, not other element of the product, each individual element adds up and gives this holistic vision of superiority in the chosen area. So the starting point is being really clear on your concept, and this is one of the challenges. So our client in this interest, they had a brand vision, they had a concept vision for this particular product, but actually it changed between R&D teams and marketing teams. So when you're designing for the future, you need to know precisely what you're defining for. What does that brand mean? What does it mean to the client? But more importantly, what does it mean to consumers? And you need one single concept to work to, otherwise you can't design against it. Then what you need to do is you need to define the attributes to refine. So again, speaking with the design teams, like what do you actually need to know? So as I mentioned previously, shape, size, texture, viscosity, smell, opening, closing, all those parts, all those elements together, what actually matters? What do they need to know? And the third part of it is selecting axis, which reflects both appeal and the core concept. So interestingly, in this arena, what our design team needed, they said, actually, we've got core territories, but we also need to understand if we were to perhaps in future stretch beyond sustainability and efficacy and wanted to make a more premium SKU or push this SKU a little bit more premium, what could we do? If we were sort of thinking design style wise, classic versus modern, again, what does that give us permission to design? So again, it's looking at this. This is a working document. So if they're thinking, right, we need to design something that's both premium and modern, what are the shapes, the sizes, the colours, the textures, which fit within these parameters? And the really important layer to put over something is what's actually ideal and what's acceptable. Because just because someone has mapped something in a high place, this is quite interesting on this example here. So you have that, that could be, I think it's a Lenore bottle at the top, C. If someone's mapped that there, so it's most premium, most modern, but actually it might not have the greatest level of appeal. Like, well, design-wise, it is that, but my preference is actually for something a little bit simpler. And again, that's how you win in the market. So the technique we use is we say to consumers, right, this is a concept, this is a laundry product we're trying to create. Okay. We then say, okay, thinking about this concept, if it was more a sustainability focus, there's a sustainability twist on this, thinking just about the shape of the bottle, just forget everything else, just about the shape, where would you put it? You know, how would you map these 20 bits of stimulus, or 15 to 20, you want no more than that? How would you map them on here? So first off, as a group, they start shuffling them around. They start moving them around and going, okay, well, this would be more modern, etc. This is sustainable, so premium sustainability that communicates efficacy, etc. More modern, etc. So you've got that, and you get into to explain it. So talk me through these products. It's quite quick, it's quite instinctive, it's very reactive. But then you go, okay, so I can see where you've positioned them. What appeals? So very much talking through that as well. So what's the ideal? So you're very specifically telling the teams where to focus. And you basically repeat this. So one attribute at a time. It's quite quick, it's quite instinctive. And you've really got to probe that liking and specific connotations in the axis as well. So first off, you'd look at you know, the shape. You'd map that, you'd understand that, and they go, okay, same concept. Then let's have a look at the colour of the liquid, or pack colour, or the claims, and you keep repeating this up until you build this picture of what not only superiority looks like, but actually how everything interplays together as well. You know, we suddenly have a clear vision when you layer everything on top of each other, of the shapes, the tones, the colours, the language, whatever the attribute is that fits with this vision, and crucially, what appeals most in that area. So you're really combining system one thinking, this, you know, automatic, fast, subconscious, intuitive level, with something system two, a bit more conscious, a bit more rationale. So get that language in there. And actually, when we're looking at the future, it's choosing the right stimulus, which is so important. So example, like if you were looking at care and choosing a stimulus for care, how do you communicate that? Look for things outside of the category with similar areas. So for example, okay, well, what else talks about care? Well, it could be furniture polish, it could be car waxing, it could be face creams, acai bowls. All of these different elements still have care and holistic well-being as a principle. So what can we learn from those packagings? How can we look outside our category? Because this is how we drive stretch in the future. This is when we're inspiring the design teams. We can look for other categories for inspiration. You know, we want to go further than what the competitors are doing. This is about future-proofing. So have a look at what you're trying to design for, and think about other categories with a link to similar fundamental benefits. The other thing you need to achieve this is a future thinking mindset from consumers. And this is very hard. And it's that lovely Henry Ford quote you've probably all heard me quote before when I'm talking about, you know, if I'd have asked people and what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. So we need to take people beyond the immediate constraints of their own world and, oh, I like this now. What could they like in future? So again, do some tasks up front, give them some homework. So build a digital mood board, a visual representation of the future using products and images outside the category. Get them thinking about the current product now, and 10 years in the future, how has it changed to meet their needs? Beyond that, what's the world going to look like? What's the context? You know, what are we going to be, where are we going to be living, playing, eating, working? All these little bits get us further into the future mindset. And also, this is a tough ask for consumers. It's very hard, it's very fast paced, and keeping it fun, keeping it engaging can be quite hard work. So obviously it's about energy from the moderator, but being really clear with what they need to do. So you've got to make it compelling. Give them a mission, go, you have got 5 minutes to do this. You need to think about collaborating with others to achieve a common goal. So again, it's making sure that they work together, and also really rewarding effort with rapid, clear feedback as well. So when they're talking to you about what they've done, it is been really clear and fantastic, brilliant. That is useful because this is what we're going to do with this information. Or actually, that doesn't make sense. Tell me a little bit more about that. How does that work? That's not clear. Again, sometimes they are more direct questions than you'd use in traditional Qual. This is short and sharp to get the information. There's so many core challenges with this. You know, you've really got to keep things moving and keeping up the pace. Get biscuits in the room, make it interactive. Really make sure consumers, participants focus on very specific attributes. And this can be quite hard for them to do. So very much debrand the stimulus where you possibly can. So it's hard for consumers to separate colour from material, for example, but you need to make sure they can do that. So sometimes that's briefing them, but where possible, try and do that with a stimulus in advance. And it takes a long time. It's quite hard work physically lifting and move the stimulus about. So multiple sets set up around the room already really helps. So this is a group I'm going to use for of products I'm going to use for colour. This is going to shape, etc. And another body in the room to bring them to the table and put them back. Again, it's quite nice sometimes to get consumers involved in helping you. Again, it's that team effort. Very much, you know, there are restrictions due to COVID as well. So the first time we were doing this towards the end of, not lockdown, but towards the end of when the world was opening up properly again, you know, there's masks in there, you're disinfecting the past, you're trying to distance, but actually we found it works so much better when we can really be back in those rooms together. And also sometimes the attributes don't work. You suddenly find they don't mean as much as you thought they did to consumers, or a bit of stimulus they read nothing from. Again, that's insights in itself, working out what attributes didn't communicate. So again, flexing and adapting, you're repeating this several times. We made sure that each group repeat, we had 3 groups of each territory. So efficacy with care, 3 groups, efficacy with sustainability, 3 groups, and so on and so on. So you've got those multiple opinions. And sometimes you really do need to learn things the hard way. You've got to do a physical test run. You've got to make sure all your stimulus is labelled. And again, it's like I say, you've got to debrand your stimulus and get rid of any noise around it. You know, it's great when you look at on-market products, but if you can peel that label off, if you can empty it, it makes a real difference. And really do pre-test that session as well. So we've run this several times, and you've got to make sure they're future thinking before they get in the room. So think back to those techniques I mentioned earlier. And really, this is complex research to manage logistically. If you can do it in-house, if you're fortunate to have your own facility, we'd recommend do it, because there is so much stimulus needed and so much to and froing. Actually been somewhere close to your place of work really does help for logistical ease. And really, this did change the design game for our client. So they got the set of rules to significantly shorten the product development lifecycle. They got a playbook, this rule of technical parameters for the product and key category cues. It was about priority attribute scorecards as well, so key opportunities, areas for focus for maximum impact. And ultimately, they just have these beautiful maps, so all that stimulus across all attributes that they could take and use and learn from. So if someone came to them with a debrief, a concept, they just look at a certain area of that map for an attribute, and it gives them a head start. And it was absolutely wonderful. So we have had a great deal of success with this product for leading global brands. If you do want any more information, please do let me know. I'd be delighted to talk it through with you. So thank you very much for your time.